Hello, it's Feather, and today I'm going to be talking about The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. Now, this has been an incredibly hyped book this whole year ever since it came out. It has been #1 on the New York Times bestseller list in the YA section, and there's been so much hype about it on BookTube, so I'd be surprised if you haven't heard about it yet. But if you haven't, this is the story about a teenage black girl named Star, and she witnesses her best friend being shot by a police officer. He's unarmed, he's pulled over for a broken taillight, and things escalate from there. And so Star has to deal with the aftermath of this horrible tragedy, and she really has to come to grips with the complexities of society and race, politics, and everything else that is going on that is so relevant and timely. And I could see a lot of what was going on in here was based on things and events that have actually occurred. So Star, our main character, she lives in Garden Heights, which is in the projects, and she goes to a prestigious private school called Williamson, which is in a predominantly white area. A lot of the people who go to this school live in gated communities, and so she really has to deal with basically changing her persona when she's at school versus when she's at home. And so she's been dealing with this ever since she started going to the school, having to learning how to act differently in different situations. And she's really struggling with, am I Williamson Star or my Garden Heights Star? And what would happen, or could it ever happen, that my worlds will collide? Her worlds do collide in a way. She's dating a boy named Chris, and he is white, and he lives in the gated community, and he is incredibly rich. So they could not be more different from each other, but they have a really cute relationship, and it really adds an extra dimension to the book, dealing with interracial relationships and how that sort of thing is viewed by both the white community and the black community and the families in each. And I really liked how this book grappled with a lot of different complex issues. Now, I will say that this book does deal a lot with racism. There's a lot of abuse in here, and I think it's the second chapter where they have the graphic shooting scene where her best friend is shot. And while I do recommend this to absolutely everybody, if you know you're going to be sensitive to that kind of thing, don't feel ashamed to pass on this book for now. If you don't think you can handle it, that is perfectly fine, and it is important to take care of yourself and your emotions and to know what you can handle and what you can't. I wouldn't want to push anything on anyone that they're not ready for. But to continue on in my review, I will say that this is a really good book for learning about multiple perspectives. So you don't just see the black community perspective in this book. Black Lives Matter is a huge focus on here, and it's a huge emphasis, but it's not the only perspective. You get to see the perspective of several different groups. So you see the gangs and the drug dealers, you see the Black Lives Matters proponents, you see the police officers, you see the people in the prestigious communities that aren't directly involved in these shootings, and they're just hearing about it from the media. You see people working in the justice system, you see people who are blatantly racist, and then you see people who are not intentionally racist but have grown up in a society that at its institutional level is a racist society, and all the things that arise from that. I also really liked how this talked about culture, and how I know a lot of times people just want us all to get along, and a lot of times people think that that has to mean acting the same, and that's not the case. I think it's really important to celebrate different cultures, and white culture is very different from black culture, and it's hard for someone like myself to understand black culture when I don't live in it, when I haven't grown up in it. And even if you have friends that are different from you, it's not the same as growing up in that culture. So it's really interesting to see from another person's point of view, which is one of the reasons I love reading books, is that you can see other people's points of view. And I've heard the saying, why can't we all be colorblind? You know, why do we have to see people's different skin colors? Why can't we all just treat everyone equally? And I see where people are coming from. Yes, we definitely need to treat people equally, but at the same time, we need to celebrate differences. It's not wrong to have a different culture, and we don't all need to act the same. Another thing this book really emphasizes and focuses on is Black Lives Matter and the origins of Black Lives Matter, and it also talks about the Black Panthers and their movement. And there's a lot I could say about that. There's a whole video's worth of stuff that I could talk about that, but I will say it doesn't really go into a lot of detail with the Black Panthers movement, but it does talk about their 10-point program, and there's a lot of misconceptions about the Black Panthers, and I would encourage you, if you haven't heard very much about them or you don't know very much about them, to research who they were, what they stood for, and why they came about. And there's no excuse for violence, but at the same time, when you see the riots that occur in this book, you kind of understand why they happened, and you can see that though you disagree with them and though you completely don't support riots, it's interesting to understand why. If people aren't listening through quiet and peaceful protest, then people will start to get loud and they'll start to break things. If you think back when women didn't have the right to vote, I actually just recently watched a movie called Suffragette, and it was really good. And at one time, the suffragette movement, they got violent. They caused riots. Nobody was listening. Like, what's the difference? And then you can go back even further. The American Revolution, the French Revolution. Why are these things celebrated, but the Black Lives Matter movement is seen as terrorism and destruction? And why can't people have peaceful protests? Yeah, it would be nice if peaceful protests worked. That's the thing, that's the problem. There's another character in here that I want to talk about, Haley, one of Star's best friends. She's another character who has grown up in a very privileged family. She's white, she's rich, she's a lot like Chris, but unlike Chris, she doesn't try to understand. She's actually a lot like some people that I have met. She doesn't think she's racist, but she'll say and do things that are offensive and she doesn't realize it, and Star points this out to her. She says, that was actually kind of an offensive joke, or that was something that was offensive that you said, or you're actually not really understanding where I'm coming from, and that hurts me. And Haley is very defensive and she says, oh, I'm not racist, I can't believe you would call me racist. And I see this so often. I see people that are called out for doing things that are offensive and they're like, I'm not racist, I have black friends, and that's their go-to excuse. Like, yeah, you can have friends that are black, but you can still do and say things that are racist, because in the end, you've grown up in a society, in a privileged position, and since you are privileged, you're not really aware of other perspectives and where other people are coming from and what other people deal with. And I wouldn't say that that makes anyone a bad person, but at the same time, you really have to stop and think about what the other person is saying and apologize sincerely, and then try and do better. And be aware that if you are white and if you are wealthy and you are in a position that you are privileged, a lot of times you are not even aware of things that are problematic just because you've been so ingrained in your society that you've grown up in. Another thing this book does is it really shows how media is really twisted, and it really just wants to get a story sensationalized, and it wants the views. And so when you see something on the media, I would recommend that you really go and do your research and find out the whole story behind the situation, because you're gonna see things that are manipulated from either side. And finally, I know this whole book is surrounding like Black Lives Matter and police brutality and all that, but this book is not anti-cop and it's not incredibly preachy. Someone even asked Star, they say, would you say you're anti-cop? And she says, no, I mean, my uncle's a cop. I just wish that people would stop making assumptions and living in fear. And this is not a direct quote, but that's essentially what she's saying, is that a lot of the times these incidences happen because people make assumptions based on fear, and that fear at the root is based in institutionalized racism. This book, I feel, really helps to open your eyes and show you different perspectives. So yeah, I would highly recommend you to read this, and if there's any book that you read in 2017, I would recommend that it be this one. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day. Bye!